This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 37 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we are joined by Carrington Harrison, who hosts The Drive on 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. Carrington, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, a podcast that you sort of have a connection to. Are you aware that your former producer, Ben Heisler, used to host this podcast?
I did know that. It's an honor to even be here on the podcast with you guys. I've watched several episodes of it, and the fact that for the Super Bowl, of all the media people that you could have had to come on here, you chose me from little old Kansas City, Missouri to be on here is truly an honor. So I'm really excited to be on with you today.
Yeah, well, we definitely gotta get the pulse of the Kansas City fan right now, and obviously a lot going on in Kansas City right now. But how are things there? Like what is the confidence level of the Chiefs fan right now?
I mean, the confidence level is extremely high. It's funny, I was thinking about this yesterday, that going into the Tampa Bay Super Bowl, Kansas City fans were extremely confident. Now, obviously, we know how that game played itself out. The confidence level, at least heading into it, feels pretty comparable. It was shaky that second half of the season. The Chiefs went 4-4 in their final 8 games, so there wasn't a lot of reason to be overly optimistic about Kansas City. But when you hold Miami to 7 points, when you go on the road and beat Buffalo, when you go on the road and beat Baltimore in their first AFC championship game since 1971, Chiefs fans got that old swagger back, like they were kind of doubting their team for a minute. But I mean, this defense has been exceptional. Patrick Mahomes has only been sacked 2 times in 3 games and hasn't thrown an interception. Travis Kelce looks like wide receiver number 1 again. Balance has been restored in Chiefs Kingdom.
Are you a Chiefs fan? Are you a lifelong Chiefs fan? Are you from Kansas City?
So I actually am. I'm lifelong, born and raised in Kansas City. You were going to make fun of me for this. So my half brother was a big Broncos fan as a kid, just a big Broncos fan. So I never was a Chiefs fan growing up. And then when I went to college, he just switched to the Eagles. Like Michael Vick had got out of prison. And you remember that first year with Michael Vick on the Eagles. Yeah. He was incredible. So he just switched to the Eagles, and he's still an Eagles fan. So I was like, wait, I don't want to cheer for the Eagles. Like, I don't want to cheer for the Broncos anymore. I was only cheering for the Broncos because you cheer for the Broncos. So I actually am not a fan of any NFL team. I obviously want the Chiefs to win, born and raised in Kansas City. I mean, I've got to see 2 Super Bowl parades and 1 World Series parade. So I've been very fortunate in my lifetime in Kansas City. The only team that I cheer for is the Missouri Tigers. Like, that's the team that still gives me all of that fan vibes, the up and downs, want you to fire their head coach or donating to their name, image, and likeness. That's the only team I'm a diehard fan of. But I absolutely have an appreciation for the Chiefs and just seeing what they're doing over the course of these, last 5-6 seasons. This is a dynasty, and I'm a big believer that, like, dynasties are, you planted your flag to let people know that you were here in the history of the NFL. The same way that the Steelers did in the 70s, the Niners did in the 80s, the Cowboys did in the 90s, the Patriots did for basically all of our adult life. The Chiefs are that team now. Like, there's an 11-year-old right now that maybe doesn't have a full understanding of how great the Patriots were. They see the Chiefs as the best team in the NFL and one of the best teams that they've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's almost like hard to fathom that, like, not only are they a dynasty, but right now, I mean, even Bob Costas the other day coined them America's team, and it really does. It feels like that with the Chiefs right now. And when I think about the Chiefs, like with me growing up, I'm a Jets fan, and I feel like there was a really long period where both franchises were kind of like parallel with each other, like from 1967 to say 2010-ish. Like the Chiefs' history as a franchise was very similar to the Jets. Like they both had the one early Super Bowl, then they couldn't get back. Neither team had a really dominant run during those years, but they both had seasons where they were championship contenders, just never were able to break through. So like I as a Jets fan, I cannot imagine just like that feeling of ever being able to come to grips with the fact that you're now watching a dynasty. And like it's almost like just it like you're seeing it, but I almost wonder at what point it would feel real after all those years of not being able to break through. Now, for a Chiefs fan to be staring at this team, knowing that they are a dynasty.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I used to intern for Nick Wright, and I was his producer when I was out of college. And he and I went to one Chiefs game. We went to Chiefs Browns. It was late in the year, and that game was blacked out. Like, you remember the old rules. If you didn't sell out the tickets, they just blacked out the game. And usually a grocery store, some local business would just buy all of them up at a discount, and then the game would be on television. But this game, I think just Kansas City was so mad at the Chiefs that they let this game be blacked out. So the only way that you could watch it was to go to the game. So to think about that, that the Chiefs didn't win a playoff game for most of my life until 2015 was the first time that they had won a playoff game. It was that Saturday morning, 3:00 ESPN on the road against Houston. Houston always plays the first postseason game every single year, and just seeing all of that. And then I think you had a really good feeling that the Chiefs were going to draft a quarterback, and it was really between two players. It was between Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. And at the time, Deshaun Watson, you remember, out of Clemson, it was, hey, this kid's good. Like, he maybe is the best quarterback in this draft class. If you got a chance to go get Deshaun Watson, you go get him. And then the Chiefs are picking at 27. They then move up to number 10. And that whole time, I think they're moving up to get Deshaun Watson. Like, it just makes all the sense in the world. And then they draft Patrick Mahomes. And I don't want to say there was like a measure of disappointment, but just hey, this guy won a national championship, probably should have won a Heisman Trophy at Clemson. Like, this was the guy that you should have drafted. You remember, this is when we had the stigma about Big 12 quarterbacks and the spread. And, hey, this just doesn't translate to the NFL. And it's funny this week on our radio show. So yesterday we actually had various players and coaches that were part of the 2019 team. So the first Chiefs team that won the Super Bowl. And I asked them, hey, when was your moment where you realized that Patrick was special? And I remember it for me it was his first home start. It was against the San Francisco 49ers. Go back and watch this touchdown pass that he made to Chris Conley. And I remember every Sunday my friends come over and we watch Red Zone and we watch football. And I remember he made this play, and I said to my friend, that's Aaron Rodgers. Like, I had seen Aaron Rodgers at that moment, like the athleticism, the arm strength, the creativity, the just everything. And I was like, the Chiefs have Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback. The next week, it's Monday Night Football. He makes the left-handed throw against the Denver Broncos with Von Miller chasing him. And I think at that point in the first month of the season, you realize that the Chiefs had somebody very, very special. Now, I didn't know that he was going to be maybe Tom Brady. He's even better than I thought he was going to be, even at that moment. But it's been such an incredible run over the last 4 or 5 seasons or so. And, like I said, this is one of the dynasties in the history of the league.
And you're in Kansas City right now. You're not in Vegas for the Super Bowl. Have you taken your show to Radio Row for any of the Chiefs Super Bowl runs?
So I am actually going down there on Friday. So I'll be doing my show from Radio Row on Friday. I was there in the Miami Super Bowl. So the first one they won against San Francisco. And then the Tampa Bay one, you remember that was COVID. That was just a very weird time. And we didn't actually send any shows there. And then we only sent the midday show for these last 2 Super Bowls. So at least for the whole week. So yeah, I'll be down there. I actually fly out after the show on Thursday. And then I'll be doing the show from Radio Row on Friday. So really excited to go there. I love Vegas. I mean, who doesn't love Las Vegas? It's just always a great time. And, to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and just to see the excitement around them. Like, this wasn't the one that the Chiefs were possibly supposed to get. I mean, this is like the Chiefs were the 5 seed in the NCAA tournament and then made the run to the national championship. You're like, wait, hold on. Like, how did this team get to the Super Bowl? So, I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement because this kind of feels like found money. Like, this feels like the $10 that you found in your pocket when you were washing your jeans out, that you're just really excited. Even though that's your money, it just feels a little different. How
do you like broadcasting from Radio Row?
It's
funny. Do you enjoy like all the players walking around and stuff like that? Like, is there an excitement or an energy just kind of in the room?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I would say it's funny because I've done Radio Row 2 times. I did it for the Patriots and Seahawks Super Bowl. So the Marshawn Lynch goal line, we were there. So the Chiefs aren't playing in that one. And then it was much more about celebrity. And then, the second time the Chiefs are actually in it. So it's less about celebrity and it's more about getting, hey, your team is in the Super Bowl for the first time since 1970. I'm not interested in having somebody on the show that wants to talk about avocados. Like, I want to get you guys the best football people that are here. Like, every football person that really matters is in this space, the competition to get them on the show. And we have to be honest about Radio Row, at least in our profession. You really get to see the hierarchy of where you are in the food chain. Like, you'll see Joe Montana walking around. Joe Montana is not coming on your show, Tulsa. Like, you have no chance of getting Joe Montana on your show. Like, I don't care what your ratings are. I don't care how personable you are. You are not getting Joe Montana on your show. So, like, I do think it is a networking event. And, like, if you want to see the juice that you have in this business, then you got to go to Radio Row. And when you go up to people and you're trying to talk to handlers and agents and all that kind of stuff, that's when you'll really know how people respond to you and your work and what you've done.
Do you get a little bit of a leg up being that you're from Kansas City and the Chiefs are in it? Like, does that help you to get better guests?
Yeah, I would say at this point, at least for the Super Bowl, I'm pretty focused on who I want. Like, I only really want football guests at this point.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't speak knowledgeably about the game and give us an insight or a stat or something of that magnitude, then I'm not super interested in having you on. I mean, everybody is going to Radio Row for a different reason, for a different purpose. And I think it matters, like I said, like if your team is in it or not. So this week, we have our regular football guests, and, it's kind of shooting for big names, people that can speak pretty knowledgeable about the team, about the game, and about everything that's happening. So, I mean, this week, at least from a guest perspective, I wouldn't say is too much different than what we normally do, just because we're not physically at Radio Row, at least for the first 4 days of it, that it's been pretty standard. And I think the audience wants to hear from people that really know the Chiefs or really know San Francisco this week.
Yeah. You definitely get a lot of those, just listening to different shows, you get a lot of those interviews where somebody comes on for 8 or 9 minutes, but they spend 3 minutes promoting whatever reason they're there for, and it kind of like loses some substance then.
Yeah, really. And I guess Jason Barrett, I went to his conference right before COVID, and he said something that really stuck with me. He was like, "Are you filling time or maximizing time?" And I like that, just like is always stuck in my head when you program the show. You listen to a lot of people's show and you can kind of tell the difference. Like, if you do this long enough, or if you listen to enough sports radio, I can hear when you prep for a topic. I can hear when ideas sparked your mind and now it built into another topic. I can hear when you were rambling to fill in time because you can't just break. That's a difference between a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, this podcast can go 30 minutes or it can go 4 hours. It's your podcast. Like, no one can tell you how long it needs to be. My segments have to be 10 minutes, 25 minutes. I don't have any choice over that. That's just the way that it got set up. So at least for me during Super Bowl week, just making sure that we maximize the time that we're on the air. And, the average person is going to listen for 20, 25 minutes. I'm not naive enough to think that somebody is in their car listening to all 20 hours of the Super Bowl coverage that we're going to do. So, if I only got you for 20, 25 minutes over the course of the week, I want you to be informed about the game, or I want you to be entertained, or I want you to laugh, or, be able to relate to the show in some kind of way about the food or the people that you're going to watch the game with. So, that those are kind of my focuses heading into this week.
And then you get to interview Patrick Mahomes throughout the season. He's sort of like your Aaron Rodgers to Pat McAfee.
I think Aaron gives a lot more quotables than Patrick is willing to give, at least when it comes to that. But yeah, no, Patrick comes on. That actually started the year that they went to their second Super Bowl. So heading into the one against Tampa Bay. So it was, right at 2019, heading into COVID. It's been a really good experience. Pat's been really gracious with his time, and just getting a better understanding of how he thinks and how he operates, sort of behind the scenes. And just, as our relationship and our conversation and the interviews, I think, have grown, over the last few years of being able to do them has been really cool. And I certainly understand and appreciate the access that I get, You could argue that he's the best American athlete right now. This is like getting the Steph Curry interview every week, or LeBron, or, one of those kind of interviews. So I definitely understand the importance of it every single week.
Is he entertaining and insightful? Like, obviously he's not Aaron Rodgers in terms of giving quotes and making headlines like that. But does it feel like he's giving you good stuff every week, or does it feel like he's just trying to avoid making headlines when you're talking to him?
I think it depends on if they win or lose. I can kind of tell just based on, his attitude. Like if you talk to anybody for 4 years, you could just kind of get a sense and a tone for what kind of conversation it's going to be and what the day is going to be. I think the best way to describe it is he's probably Russell Wilson with a lot more personality. Like, going into it, Russell is going to hit you with those quarterback cliches. Like Russell's not trying to be in the spotlight in that way. I think Patrick is very, very similar. Like you can tell when he wants to deliver a message or this is the team's message. One thing that really stood out to me after the AFC Championship game was he and Travis Kelce kept saying the same thing over and over and over. Hey, we got the guys in this locker room to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. Trust us, trust us, trust us. And it got hard. Their offense, this offense was 17th in the NFL at scoring this year. And for a team that has Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes, there's no reason for Cleveland to score more points than you in the regular season like they did or some of the other teams. So, there definitely was a lot of questions about their offense, coming into the postseason. And they were right. It worked. This team has been on a run in these last 3 weeks where at least heading into the Super Bowl, I think they're playing their best football. And I'm not really certain if San Francisco is.
Did you have Patrick on or will you have him on this week?
We had him on after the AFC Championship game. So, no, he's not going to come on this week. Yeah, he came on the Wednesday after the game. So, I kind of knew going into it. Hey, it's going to be a little bit of AFC Championship game. It's going to be some look ahead to the Super Bowl. But with all the media obligations that he has, I didn't expect him to come on this week, and I certainly understand it. He has to do, Super Bowl media day. They do media every single day. I was not very optimistic about my chances of getting Patrick Mahomes on the phone.
How are the Chiefs with the media? Like, are they good about giving access to players and coaches? Obviously, you get Mahomes, but like in New York, the Knicks, for example. It feels like it's been years since I heard a Knicks player, coach, or executive do a sports radio interview. So do the Chiefs, are they good about giving access to everybody?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are pretty good. At this point, it's just gotten to such a formula and a routine, like what you can ask for and what you can't ask for, like we get Patrick Mahomes every Monday after the game. And we usually get a player interview. Now, I requested Travis Kelce every week, and they didn't give me Travis Kelce. But, I didn't think I was getting Travis Kelce. I just want him to come on. Hey, there's a lot to talk to you about. I would even talk to Travis, not about his girlfriend. Just, hey, how's football going for you? But, no, we didn't get Travis Kelce. But, that's basically it. We get Mahomes, and we get one player every week. Outside of that, I don't really know what more they could or should provide for the show. I'm also just a believer, and everybody's show is different. And maybe this is like my program director, but maybe this is like the arrogance of being a sports talk host. I would like to think that like you are tuning in to hear my opinion on things.
Yeah, definitely.
And, and if our show is predicated on who is coming on the show that's not me, then that's just not a formula that you can sustain long-term, at least at sports talk. It's different on a podcast. You and I both love an interview podcast that it's, hey, I want to hear who they got, and I want to hear these behind-the-scenes stories. I'm just not expecting Chris Jones to come on the show and give me some great behind-the-scenes, this is what the locker room story is like. That's not really it. So, I just, we our show's kind of unique. We don't really have a lot of guests. We don't really take a lot of phone calls. It's really just me, my producer, the text line, and vibes, I guess, so to speak.
Have you had Travis on in previous years? I would imagine he's definitely harder to book this year than in past seasons.
Yeah, it's funny. So me and my friends were actually laughing about this in my group chat at the very beginning of the week. So there's a local grocery store. So you know how every team kind of does one of those like coaches shows, player shows, all of them. So Travis was doing a meet and greet. So I put it in my group chat. I was like, hey, if you want to meet Travis Kelce, hey, I can like get you set up. You can meet him. And I was like, no, I don't really, it's kind of far. It's a weekday. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, really? Like, he might be the best living tight end. Like, he's super cool. I've met him before. He's great. Like, you don't want to meet him? No. So this week we were laughing about it. And they're like, man, I should have got my picture with Travis Kelce. And I'm like, I tried to tell you. You know what I mean? It's funny because, like if you were under 40 and let's say you go out, I'm not even saying you go out to the club, but you go to a bar, or you like to go eat or whatever those things, like you would run into Travis pretty regularly. Like it wasn't like he was secluded. Like you never see Patrick Mahomes out, but you understand why Patrick Mahomes is not socializing. But like before the last year or so, you would see Travis out, you'd see him at a bar, you would see him eating. It was just kind of, hey, Travis and his friends are here, all of that has changed. That has changed. I mean, people used to know where Travis lived. I mean, that was a big reason why he moved recently was, like, oh, Travis Kelce lives up there. He lives up north. And, now he moved to a more gated community for, obvious reasons, given, his change in social status. That it's been really crazy to see how I equate it to like an underground band that has now gone mainstream. That like you got to see them at a small venue and now they pack out Staples Center. Like we have seen Travis Kelce go from football star to pop culture star.
Yep.
Those are two completely different things. And something that not many football players get to be. This in New York, like Odell Beckham was a really good football player. When he made that catch, he crossed over and he became a pop culture star. Johnny Manziel was a pop culture star. I mean, I was thinking this as I was driving into work. The number one story about the Super Bowl is a player's girlfriend. Like, it's not about Brock Purdy. It's not about Mahomes getting his third. The story of, I think this is going to be the most watched Super Bowl ever. It's a player's girlfriend and his reaction and how good he is and his personality. And we actually led the show with this yesterday. I think Travis Kelce has handled it about as well as you can. I don't know a whole lot about Taylor Swift's background, her relationships. I'm not a Swiftie by any means, but I can just imagine how difficult it is at times to be Taylor Swift's boyfriend. Like it doesn't matter. You could win Best Picture of the Year. You could be the best actor in the world. The first question they're going to ask you is about her and what she's doing in her life. And I can see how that is like swallowed up other individuals. And I think Kelce deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled this. How every single time he has answered a question, he has never looked upset. He has always been above board. And he has been a true superstar over the course of the last, 5-6 months as their relationship has grown.
Yeah, we talked before just about like the adjustment of going from watching your favorite team to watching now what is a dynasty. But how strange is it also, just from a similar standpoint, watching arguably the most famous person in the country become this massive storyline for the Chiefs throughout the season?
I think it's really cool, especially as like someone like born and raised in Kansas City. Like I love Kansas City with all my heart, like I don't really have a desire to live in too many different places. So to see someone interact with the city, and you can tell like she is gaining that love and appreciation for Kansas City, you read stories in the newspaper about she went to this restaurant or they went to this restaurant. And Travis, or I guess Taylor, like I haven't read or heard any negative story about her in Kansas City. Like not her being rude to a waiter, not her being impatient, not her being a poor tipper. Like everybody is genuinely excited about her being here. And, I'm not the biggest Swiftie fan in the world. I don't listen to her music, but she not bothering me. I'm not bothering her. She likes Kansas City. I like Kansas City. She's happy. He's happy. Like, why would I not be happy in this scenario? Like, it doesn't have any effect on my life. So, I mean, I think it's cool. I'm happy for them. I hope they get married. I hope they have kids. I want nothing but success. So, honestly, this is a story about Travis Kelce. So, one of my really good friends wanted to meet him, and his charity invited me to come to their event. So, she got a chance to meet him, and Travis just couldn't have been nicer to her. And, after that, she went and bought a jersey. She bet. So this is the first time. So she signed up. You know how like FanDuel and DraftKings, they do like bet 5, get 200.
Yep.
She bet all of it on Travis Kelce to score a touchdown last year in the Super Bowl. He scored a touchdown last year in the Super Bowl. So she won like a lot of money. So ever since then, she's just been the biggest. And she's also a Swiftie. So I'm telling you, this is like the happiest time of her life. She got to meet Travis Kelce. and now he's dating her favorite musician. So, like I have a lot of respect for Travis for how he handled that situation. And you know what they say, like kindness is, or like you can tell somebody who's great by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. And the fact that he was just so nice to her in that moment when he didn't have to, I'm always going to be a Travis Kelce fan.
Have most Chiefs fans accepted Taylor Swift as one of them? Like, were fans concerned earlier on when Travis if he had a bad game or anything like that about Taylor's effect on him? Where you saw that in some of the national media, like Skip Bayless was complaining about, saying that Taylor Swift was a problem for Kelce earlier in the year. Were Chiefs fans ever concerned about that relationship?
I mean, that's just kind of how people are. I mean, you remember a couple of years ago when Patrick Mahomes had a struggle, they said he was doing too many commercials. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that was a complaint that people have. I mean, the Grammys just happened on Sunday. Kansas City was #1 in the ratings. Like, Kansas City is very much a place that if you embrace the city, then the city is going to embrace you and make them one of your own. And at this point, Taylor Swift is from Kansas City. Like, she is not from Nashville. She is not from Philadelphia or any of these other places. Like, she is from Kansas City. So I think for the most part, Chiefs fans are really excited about it. And I think we have just made so much about this when every time that they show her on the screen, she seems to be having a really good time and she seems to be out of the way. Like, she's not in the stand. She's not sitting 50-yard line holding a sign, just bringing a lot of attention to herself. She's not wearing a shirt that says stream my album and using this as promotion. She walks in, she says hi, she sits in the booth. There's a lot of famous people. I mean, she got famous people. #1, she went to a Thursday night Chiefs and Broncos game, which was it was an awful game. She was here on Christmas. She was here on New Year's. That Dolphins game, it was the 4th coldest game in NFL history. It was a wind chill of -17. You went to a Chiefs game, that's love. You know what I mean? So, like, she has just really persevered and been there the entire step of the way. So I would say overwhelmingly Taylor Swift has the support of Kansas City and its fans.
Yeah, so now she's in Tokyo on Saturday for a concert. Supposedly going to attempt to go to Vegas, or she'll be in Vegas for the Super Bowl. I can't imagine her not being there. But if something happens and for some reason she's not able to get there, are Chiefs fans going to be concerned that she's not there? Are they going to be happy that she's not there, or just no effect at all? Doesn't really matter.
No one is even. It's funny you asked that question. No one even has the concern on whether or not she will be at the game. Like, everyone is, she will 100% be at the game. The question is, will she be at the parade? That's the question that people have already moved to. So their parade is going to be on Wednesday. So it's going to be Valentine's Day. So 1 week from today, if the Chiefs win, that's when they're. So I don't know her tour schedule. I don't know what it is. But you would think she's been there for all of this other stuff. She has to be at the parade, right? She has to be.
That's a great first Valentine's Day together too at the Super Bowl
she has to be at the Super Bowl parade. Or I could see them maybe going to Disney World. Like, I actually think that Travis is going to win Super Bowl MVP. I'm a big believer that this is going to be another year in which a non-quarterback wins it, kind of like Cooper Kupp a couple of years ago. Yeah. And you tell me, what is the better? If you talk about the script of the NFL, it is Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift embracing each other after a Super Bowl win that says, we're going to Disney World. You're going to give me that at 12-1, 16-1, depending on where you bet. I hopped on that a long time ago.
All right, we'll move on from Taylor Swift. Maybe not quite as popular as Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, but still pretty popular as Pat McAfee. How was it getting shouted out on his show a couple of years ago? You had that. You reported something on Patrick. It was during the playoffs. I think it was after everyone thought Patrick Mahomes got a concussion. You had got the scoop and reported that he didn't have a concussion. McAfee showed that tweet on his show, and he said something along the lines of about not knowing who you were, but he went with the report anyway.
He was actually really cool about it. He actually follows me on Twitter. He came on the show in the 5 o'clock hour that day. So we had
he did. He came on your show.
Yeah, he did. He came on the show then. I know that media people will not try to make it seem like this, but like I would think for the most part, like we're kind of fans of each other. Like, I'm fans of people. I have a personal relationship with Nick Wright, big fan of his, big Colin Cowherd fan. I got the chance to talk to him about career stuff. That was really cool. Big fan of Bomani Jones. Like if you do this for a living, kind of like anything, if you're a master chef, there's people's food that you like and you want to go to their restaurant and try it. So, that part was cool. And I mean, if we were doing a power ranking right now of people that do this in the industry, Pat McAfee might be number one on the list. He's certainly really high on the list. So,
yep.
The fact that he, said my name and we had it as a drop and we kind of had some fun with it over the course of it was really cool, was really fun. He couldn't have been more gracious when he came on the show. So it was cool. I really appreciate it.
And what about getting that report with Mahomes at that time, like getting that injury report, the fact that he didn't have a concussion? It was something that everybody in the NFL world was focused on. Do you like that sort of like journalistic aspect to the job? Are you somebody who you're looking for information like that on your show, or are you more so a host that's just trying to like react to information that other people give?
I mean, I'd probably say it's like 80% just wanting to react. People always bring up like, oh, are you a journalist? I certainly try to like abide by like certain ethical standards, but I consider myself to be an opinionist, that's what I get paid to do. Hey, this thing happened. I'm going to tell you what I think about this thing. And I never try to go into a topic with hey, this is right or this is wrong. At least very rarely. I mean, there are some times when like, hey, this is wrong, this is messed up, and you're crazy if you don't feel this way. But for the most part, I just try to, hey, this is what I think, and this is why I think it. And you are free to agree or disagree. I remember Cowherd said this a while ago, and I try to keep it in mind. Like, I don't have an opinion about your opinion based on what I said. Like, I'm not too interested in, hey, you think this about what I think. Like, no, like you are free to disagree. You're free to have your opinion, based on whatever I had to say. And, I try to think that all my takes come from a very honest place. I try to at least keep them in that vein. So I just try to kind of keep that in mind about all of it. At least with the reporting, whenever you get kind of one of those, I think you have a greater understanding of how hard it is to be in Rappaport, or how hard it is to be Adam Schefter or Albert Breer, or, some of the great reporters that are out there. It ain't easy. You know what I mean? Like it's relationships, it's time, it's trust. And, like just understanding too that, sometimes you're going to get this wrong. And, there's definitely been times where I had something, like you can't get it double or triple checked. So you're a little uneasy about it. You don't post it. And then, 2 hours later, you see it posted. You're like, man, I had that. I knew it. I just didn't go with my own gut. So for the most part, man, I just try to stay in my lane. And I'm a big believer in like, know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think I've done this enough that I know, what I'm good at. I know the lane that I'm in, and, I know what areas I'm weak in. I try to avoid them. So I am not a reporter. I very rarely try to be a reporter, but I do think it's, my responsibility if I hear something or get some information to kind of do some follow up to pass that. And obviously, that becomes content for the show, which is, my number one priority.
The other big one you had was the Tyreek Hill audio a couple years ago, and without like getting too much into the actual audio itself, but it was the recording of Hill and his then fiance at the time, and they were having a conversation, and during the conversation they appeared to talk about Hill's 2014 domestic violence incident. I first want to just like, was that audio that you stumbled on? And second, were there legal concerns at the time when playing that clip?
I like to say that it fell from the sky is probably the answer I'm willing to give. It definitely was legal concerns. I mean, trying to remember back, I think we got that audio in early June, and we didn't play it until during the All-Star break. It certainly was a lot of back and forth. I think, I guess one of the negatives of working for like a major company is just the need to like double and triple check. And if you heard that audio, there was just no question whether or not that was Tyreek Hill, right? Like there was no question that was doctored are manufactured. And I remember, there was just a lot of hesitancy on like, how do we get this authenticated, and like trying to get a confirmation from the lawyer, or confirmation from Tyreek, or somebody whose voice was in there, and then all of that back and forth. And then there was like a cost associated with it. And I was like, well, it's $1,500. I'll pay for it. Like, this is big for me. This is big for my career. This is obviously big for the station. This is, TMZ worthy news. Yeah. Why are we not doing that? There was that. And then I remember, I think it was like the day before we decided to play it, I went to my program director and I'm like, hey, training camp is right around the corner. They are getting really close to deciding what the, penalty is going to be. And, you and I will both regret this if we are sitting here on this audio and we are letting the corporate, the higher ups go back and forth and stop us from playing this. Like, we need to make one really hard push and make a play where, hey, if this thing gets scooped by either another radio station or another news source, or they mean the NFL announced their suspension, then this audio is worthless. Like, we gain nothing from having this audio. No one is going to care after the NFL announces their suspension. So, I just remember that fight. Eventually, we got the word. It was probably a Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember the day, but it was one of those 2 days. We got the word at like 5:35 that it had got approved by management. And then we just made the decision of, hey, we got to roll the dice. Like, we rolled the dice this long. We got to wait until 2:00 tomorrow to decide if we're actually going to do this or not. And I remember my boss told me to kind of tweet something kind of vague to kind of tweet, like get people's interest, kind of pique their interest a little bit. And then he told me at like 15 minutes before the show, hey, tell people what we have and tell them to tune in at 2:00. And just over that 15 minutes, just seeing, how Twitter is like all the mentions, like, oh my God, you got it. And just that day. And it was just a crazy day, like there's certain days that you really remember in this business. Yeah. I remember back when I was hosting with Danny Parkins, I remember we were at, it was the Royals wildcard game in 2014. And this was on a Tuesday, and the Chiefs played on Monday Night Football. They played the Patriots. And this game might not matter to a lot of people, but the Chiefs blew out the Patriots, and Trent Dilfer stood on the field at Arrowhead and said that the Patriots dynasty was over. And it was like, oh my goodness, like someone on ESPN on the record said this. He said this on the field at Arrowhead. And this was the famous Bill Belichick, hey, we're on to Cincinnati. Bill Belichick in that interview got asked about benching Tom Brady for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, this was the worst case scenario for the Patriots. And I remember that next day, so we were at Kaufman, and Kaufman and Arrowhead are right next to each other. And we're looking at Arrowhead, and we were talking about the Chiefs game. And I just remember feeling, I don't think anybody cares about this. Like, I think the Royals are the biggest story. And, Danny and I kind of talked about it, and we, kind of pivoted to the Royals, and you could just kind of feel the energy, like you remember those kind of days. Or, I remember being on the air, and this was the first time, Brandon, that I thought I was like kind of good at radio. Was, if you remember, this was Colin Kaepernick's first start when he was with the Niners, and, Alex Smith had gotten hurt, and Kaepernick played really well. It was Monday Night Football against the Bears. And that next day I came on the air and I said that in the offseason, Kansas City should trade for Alex Smith. And I'm telling you, I got universally crushed. Like the worst take you could ever have. And I'm like, no, wait. And I'm telling you, you know how it is when you got an idea. I'm pulling up the numbers and how much it would cost. And I got crushed. Just like early on in my radio career, got cooked for it. And I'm telling you, we were at Surprise, Arizona in spring training. And the tweet came across that from Adam Schefter that they had traded for Alex Smith. And I'm telling you, this was like when I got a PlayStation 2 as a kid. I was like, hey, I told you they were going to trade for Alex Smith. And the text line went crazy. And the calls like, hey, you said it. You've been saying it this whole time. So, there's just certain days and stories that you like remember in your career, like really pivotal moments. And that Tyreek day is just, it's up there, man. It was a really wild, 6 weeks. And a really wild, like 24 hours of making the decision to finally play.
How is Jason Whitlock perceived by Kansas City sports fans today?
Man, Whitlock was my hero when I was a kid. Just black, opinionated, wrote for the Star. I mean, this is when the Star was the paper.
Yeah.
You like look back for all the people that used to work at the Kansas City Star, like Jeff Passan and Wright Thompson and Whitlock and Joe Poznansky, you know, like just a foundation of your like sports fandom. To like see him cross over to like NWO, like that's kind of what I equate it to, you know. So I got to interview Whitlock one time.
Oh,
and
really?
One time he came in studio and came on the show, and I told him, you know, that he was somebody I looked up to. I remember I asked him about Ferguson and Darren Wilson, and it's like the answer that you gave then would be a completely different answer than you would give now about the situation. So I don't know, man. You know, it's that saying about meeting your heroes and seeing how magic works. You know, that it's kind of crazy that you know, how my fandom of Whitlock has just changed over the years. But I mean, that's life, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, and obviously you're not alone there. Like he was, I'm sure, a super popular writer there in Kansas City. And I mean, not just in Kansas City, but nationally too. Like being on the sports reporters. Like it was, you know, he was certainly a prominent figure at ESPN. I mean, I remember when Bob Costas famously quoted him on Sunday Night Football. Like no one thought anything of it that Bob Costas was quoting Jason Whitlock, but now it just seems like he's always attempting to say or tweet something more outrageous than whatever he said yesterday, and it has to be a little bit strange for somebody who grew up reading him to kind of see that career pivot take place.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always like a fork in the road with like most of us in our career, and I think the fork in the road was clearly that Deadspin article. And, you know, this was during a time where Grantland was, you know, if you were in sports media, you loved Grantland. And Grantland's evolved into The Ringer, obviously a very successful website and podcast network. But this is when Whitlock tried to make Grantland. And, you know, obviously that failed. And then you got the behind the scenes look. And I think Whitlock was sort of looking for a home and someone that would accept him. Like the black folks won't accept him anymore. So he like had to find a home, and he's definitely crossed over to a completely different team. That's probably the best.
How was he when you met him, when you interviewed him?
Funny story. So we have a close mutual friend, and there's a barbecue restaurant that we both like called Gates. And they were like, "Hey, Whitlock will do it, but this is his food order." And you know, I'm kind of broke at the time, but I'm like, "All right, man, I get to get Jason Whitlock some food. Cool, I'll do it." So he sends me the order. I didn't really have a good understanding of how much it was. So I go to Gates, and it's like a $52 order. And I'm like, all right, you know, I never spent that much money on somebody that I wasn't going to eat any of the food, but all right, cool, whatever. So I get there, and we kind of have like a little area, you know, kind of this to our own. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of fanboyed out for a minute. I kind of like had a plate for him, and I had a napkin. I had it set up for him. I was really excited that Jason Whitlock was here. You know, I was really excited. So Whitlock comes up there, and I have his food, and I'm kind of like, I want to go say something to him, but I'm trying to play it cool. And initially, like, man, I paid all this money for the food. I'm going over there. And I go over there. I'm like, oh, hey, you know, big fan. I'm happy that you're here. He looked at me and he was like, all right, I'll talk to you later. And I was like, what? Hold on, that was it? That was all I got in the moment. So yeah, that's my one Jason Whitlock story. The one time I got to meet him, I wanted him to be a little friendlier to me when we met each other. I wanted him to be friendlier.
So you mentioned a couple of times that you interned and produced for Nick Wright before you were hosting on an afternoon drive. And yeah, obviously Nick Wright is your hero. You have that there in your bio. So how was he to work with?
Man, incredible. Just to see his creative process. I mean, that's probably the one thing that I think you learn when you do something like this is like how everybody gets ready for the show or what they do. It's just like so drastically different. And, you know, like there's no right or wrong way to do it. And, you know, like I would sit there and like I could see like the wheels turning in Nick's head, and like he would just have like an hour in which he wouldn't say anything. He's like type on the computer. And like, I just kind of knew, like, don't say nothing. And like, eventually he'd be like, hey, can you look this up? And like, all right, cool, I'll do it, you know, and I looked it up. But just to kind of see his creative process was a lot of fun and exciting. It's just really cool to see all the success that he's had. And, you know, I think at least for like me on a personal level, and this is like kind of a career thing, I think we kind of treat in this business like success is like making it to like the absolute highest level that you can. And for some people, that's success. Like, I'm not saying that like a negative towards Nick, obviously, you know, like I think Nick is one of the best sports opinion people in the absolute business.
Yeah.
But like Nick's journey is different than, you know, the journey that maybe I wanted to take or other people that, you know, I'm really happy living in Kansas City. I want to live in Kansas City. And I think, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people maybe in my position, like once you kind of get out of the comparing your success to other people's success, I think when you can like truly start to be happy in this business. And that, you know, that's at least what happened for me. You know, you kind of look and you see, you know, Nick's doing these great things, and I'm really close with Danny Parkins. He's doing afternoons in Chicago. And then you're like, I'm still here in little old Kansas City. I'm better than this, you know, when you kind of start to have that mindset. And you know, when I started to kind of be happy with that decision and that choice, and I reached like a place of peace for it, you know, it started to make me happier for Nick's success and happier for Danny's, that like I wasn't comparing myself to them. You know, comparison is the thief of joy. And it started to make me like more happy with what I was doing here in Kansas City. And it even gave me a greater appreciation for, you know, moments like this, like coming on your podcast. You know, I'm just a regular local radio host, you know, like coming on a podcast like this are still moments that excite me and moments I still think are really cool.
So is that path to the national stage something that appeals to you? I know you've done some national stuff for CBS Sports Radio in the past. Like when you see Nick the way and with Danny Parkins being that he's from Chicago, like I feel like that jump from Kansas City to Chicago made a lot of sense. But Nick being that he's from Kansas City, and then he went to a bigger market, and then he went to having a national radio show on Sirius XM and doing the national TV stuff for Fox, and now he is this personality that he is. Is that still a path that appeals to you at all, or do you more so like, no, I like local radio? Because local radio is very different, and it's something that you can't necessarily recreate at a national level.
I don't know. You know, I've definitely had thoughts about it before, and I guess I kind of came to the conclusion, like, if you are leaving because of money and monetary reasons, then you are just leaving for the wrong reasons. You know, leave for an opportunity or a job or a place that you really want to work, and don't, I guess, chase the money. And I guess at this point in my career, I don't know if maybe moving to a bigger market helps me to get to where I want to go. You know, I got a great relationship with CBS, a great relationship with Sirius. I feel like if they want to hire me, it's not like, oh, well, we got to see you have success in Miami in order to hire you. Right. I feel like it'll happen at some point. I also think, you know, I guess twofold. I think at one point I'll just know, hey, it's time. Hey, I've done this. It's getting stagnant. I don't have the same energy to do this anymore. I think that's maybe one side of it. And then the second side of it is I feel honored to get to chronicle Patrick Mahomes' career and everything that's going on with the Chiefs, and to be a part of it in that way. And so, you know, when people want to talk about the Super Bowl, they think of me and being able to come on and just, you know, every day my primary job is to talk about the best football team in the world. Like that is, you know, like that is what I get paid to do for the most part. And, you know, it's afforded me a very comfortable life. It's allowed me to be able to do a lot of cool things. And, you know, from the moment I first heard sports talk, it was all I ever wanted to do. Like I didn't have another dream, or I didn't have a plan B, or, you know, I didn't want to do another career. You know, I only wanted to do sports talk radio, and I only really wanted to do it in Kansas City. So the fact that I got the opportunity to, or get the opportunity to, is still something that's really important to me. It's something that I really value. And like I said, it's something that I'm still incredibly passionate about.
Was Nick a sort of mentor? Like, did he know you wanted to be on air, and did he
Yeah.
let you get on the mic at the time? How was that?
Yeah, no, Nick has always been super supportive. When I was in college, he really encouraged me to do a podcast. So I did a college football podcast called the Big 12 Conference Call. This was back in the old Potomatic days is when I did a podcast. And yeah, no, Nick has always been super supportive. And if I need something or if I got a question about career or, life related to that kind of stuff, Nick's, one of the first people to answer the phone. So I can't speak more highly about his role in my life and my career and, helping me grow and develop and become a better broadcaster. He's been one of the best teachers I could have.
In the national media, Nick is kind of like, he's known as the LeBron guy. Did he?
He has always been the LeBron guy. So I
was going to ask if he had like a take or an opinion that he was known for when he was in Kansas City.
He's always been the LeBron guy. So I actually watched The Decision over Nick's house. I watched The Decision with Nick. This is when after work we would play NCAA football. This is when it was still coming out. We would play it every day after work. And, it was like, hey, let's watch The Decision. So, no, Nick is always – I can vouch. If there's anybody that can vouch for Nick's love of LeBron James, I promise you it is me. He has always been a big LeBron guy.
And have you ever seen Nick lose a debate or an argument? Because I'm not convinced that it's possible.
Maybe with his wife. That might be the only person. That might be the only person that I've seen him lose a debate to. He's undefeated. I think Bomani says, there's some people you're not going to out-talk, like Stephen A. Smith. Like, you might, have better points. He's just going to beat you. Like, over time, he's going to beat you. And Nick is very, very similar in that regard.
It's the last thing is, how popular is Andy Reid in Kansas City?
Super popular. I mean, you got to think about where the Chiefs were before Andy Reid got here. So it was the blackout that I told you about. Hey, their final regular season game is just not going to be on television. They had the Jovan Belcher situation. For those of you that don't know, Google the Jovan Belcher. It is an absolutely crazy story. But, this was all of it. This was a proud franchise. The only team in the 90s that won more games than Kansas City was the Cowboys. Obviously they didn't have the postseason success as, Buffalo or, some of the other teams. But that was the only team that won more games. So, the Chiefs have, they haven't been at this level they are now. But the Chiefs have been good for the most part of my life. And, they just went through a really big down period. And it was that perfect intersection of Andy Reid gets fired and the Chiefs are looking for a coach. And I remember it very vividly. That Andy, he was supposed to interview with Kansas City, and then he was going to interview with the Arizona Cardinals. And Clark Hunt just basically didn't let him leave. You know how it is. If you don't commit on that official visit, hey, there's a chance he might go somewhere else. That Andy Reid Clark Hunt did a really good job of, hey, you don't need to take any other jobs. This is the best job for you. They then make the trade for Alex Smith in the next couple of weeks. And a really big thing for them that first year, too, was, they had the number 1 overall pick. They drafted Eric Fisher, but they also had number 1 on waiver claims. So they put in 11 waiver claims. And if you were the best player to get cut, they really strengthened the back end of that roster. And they already had really good top end talent. So, Alex Smith is on that team. Dwayne Bowe's on that team. Jamal Charles is on that team. Eric Berry, Justin Houston, Tom Ali. So they already had a really good core. And then if you build depth the way that they did, and they went from the number 1 overall pick to making the postseason the next year.
Is there concern that he might retire if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? I know that narrative has kind of been out there a little bit.
No, the only people talking about this is Mike Florio. And I love Mike Florio. Mike Florio used to come on with Nick back in the day. This is when Pro Football Talk was just a blog. It was a if you know, you know. This was back in the Pro Football Talk, Deadspin, Big Lead. Back when Jason McIntyre was a computer guy. This was back in those days. So I like Mike Florio. He comes on the show probably 3-4 times a year. He's the only person talking about this. Andy Reid at every single turn has said, no, I'm not retiring. No, I'm not retiring. Clark Hunt was just on the station yesterday. He's not retiring. He's not retiring. No, I don't think he's retiring. I don't think Travis Kelce is retiring. I expect both of them to be back next season on the Chiefs.
Carrington, you were great. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely, man. It was an honor to be on with you today. Thanks a bunch.
Yep, that is Carrington Harrison. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.